Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your carefully curated stack of sources, articles, research, specialized notes, and synthesize them into the most potent, concentrated shot of knowledge available.
And today's mission, which you put together for us, is a big one. It's something we all deal with.
We all do. We're tackling a topic that tends to make us all tense up, often without even realizing it. Mistakes.
It's true. And we're really going to try and move beyond the usual self-help platitudes, the failing forward or it's a learning curve kind of talk.
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Our goal for this deep dive is to really explore the science, the psychology, and the practical shift that's required to reframe mistakes.
Yeah.
Not as these personal defects, but as what they really are. Essential, powerful catalyst for cognitive growth, for resilience, and even for surprising creativity.
And we're going deep into what the research frames as the relaxed art of learning from mistakes. I mean, just think about it. Too often, the moment an error happens, a slip up at work, a miscommunication, you botch a recipe, it triggers this immediate negative cascade.
Oh, instantly.
Self-doubt, embarrassment, or even, genuine fear. We want to transform those high anxiety moments into calm, relaxed conversations.
Absolutely. The research consensus is really clear on this. If we can learn to approach our inevitable stumbles with curiosity, with self-compassion, and maybe even a little bit of humor, we fundamentally change the way our brain processes information and stores memory.
So it's a hardware change, not just a software change.
It really is. I mean, if learning is a lifelong journey, then the most valuable, most enduring knowledge often comes from those times we got wonderfully, gloriously lost and had to find our way back.
That's the critical shift, isn't it? We need to stop seeing errors as these confessions of incompetence and start seeing them as conversations. Conversations with our future, more informed selves. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even get to the relaxed art, we have to understand the intense emotional charge surrounding error. How did this intense, almost involuntary fear of making mistakes take root in the first place?
Well, the initial studies you pulled together suggest that the roots of this mistake phobia are surprisingly deep. They're widely socialized, and they extend way back to the core structures of how we're raised and educated.
Because it starts young.
It starts very young. From early on, we're taught, often implicitly, through consequences and praise, that mistakes should be feared, and above all, they should be avoided.
It's the conditioning of these unforgiving systems. When you look at the educational structure, grading so often focuses exclusively on the correct result.
Only the right answer matters.
Exactly. It assigns minimal, if any, value to the effort or the strategic thinking or even just the bravery it takes to attempt a challenging problem where the chance of error is really high. The wrong answer gets a big red X, and that visual feedback is just so powerful and so negative.
It's a stop sign.
Yeah.
That red X, or the low score, it conditions the student to prioritize safety, to stick to known correct paths over taking any kind of intellectual risk. And that conditioning, the sources really emphasize this, it doesn't magically vanish when we enter the working world.
No, it comes right with us.
It does. I mean, despite all the widely publicized rhetoric about failing fast or failing forward, so many professional environments are still surprisingly unforgiving.
We still see these organizational cultures where a visible, large-scale mistake is just interpreted as direct evidence of personal incompetence.
Right. It's on you.
It's on you, not the system. It's not seen as a necessary learning event for the whole team. The fear of consequence of being sidelined or penalized or even losing your job, it just looms so large, and it often overrides any intellectual appreciation for the value of making errors.
And that's exactly why we have to constantly challenge this narrative.
Yeah.
We need to actively seek out and recall moments, both in our own lives and in history, where a mistake was the catalyst. It could be a simple error that launched a completely new direction for a project.
Or a miscalculation that triggered an unexpected burst of creativity.
Or even just a perfectly awkward, memorable dinner party story that now serves as, a touchstone moment in your life.
That's the psychological work we have to do. But let's get into the hard science. This is where the deep dive really begins. How do cognitive scientists and educators explain why errors are so critical for robust learning? It can't just be a motivational theory, right?
No, it's not. It's purely biological. The moment an error happens, the brain registers this rapid spike in activity. It's a reaction that's measurable by EEG and fMRI machines. Research suggests that this spike in brain activity happens about 200 milliseconds after an error is detected.
That fast.
Incredibly fast. So this isn't just a lapse. It's the brain's entire error monitoring system slamming into high gear.
Okay, so when I feel that visceral pang of discomfort or that flash of self-annoyance after I realize I've done something wrong, that's actually a neurological signal that my brain is about to start learning.
That's precisely.
Yeah.
That feeling is often generated by specific brain regions, primarily the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, and the medial prefrontal cortex. The ACC is essentially the brain's oops detector.
The oops detector, I like that.
It is. It registers the conflict between what you intended to do and what actually happened.
So the mistake itself is triggering a physical intervention from my own brain.
A very real one. The initial detection, which is often called the error-related negativity or EARN signal, is very quickly followed by something called the PAY, or error positivity. And that second signal, that indicates a shift from just detecting the error to consciously evaluating it.
And that's the learning part.
That's where it starts. This heightened state of attention caused by the discomfort means you are significantly more likely to remember the corrected information moving forward. It's an incredibly powerful memory reinforcement system.
And the sources frame this as a glorious round of neural spring cleaning. Can you explain what that means in practical terms for you listening?
It means physical rewiring of the brain. The process of grappling with the error, the reflection, the retracing of your steps, the necessary effort to find the correct path, that actually strengthens new neural pathways. And it can potentially prune the inefficient ones that led to the error in the first place.
So you don't just get a better answer next time.
No, you strengthen the neuronal connection that created a better, more efficient answer. Learning from an error is, from a biological standpoint, more effective than simply being given the correct answer from the start.
That reframing is so essential. Instead of viewing the mistake as a sign of intellectual inadequacy, it's actually proof that your brain is actively engaged in the highest form of learning. And we have some great historical anecdotes in the source material that illustrate this perfectly, turning errors into data.
Yes, Thomas Edison is the classic example. His refusal to accept the verdict of failure is just legendary. He famously stated, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work."
Right.
For him, each failure was a quantified, useful data point that just brought him one step closer to the solution. He was systematically reducing the problem space.
But isn't it easy for someone like Edison, a known genius with vast resources, to reframe failure that way? How do we apply that same wisdom when our mistake results in a real painful consequence? Like you lose a key client, or you fail an exam that really matters, or you cost the company money. That's not just data.
That's a vital, challenging question. And the answer really lies in the shift from personal blame to process analysis. Edison's genius wasn't just in his intellect, it was in his ability to detach his self-worth from the outcome of any single experiment.
So when something painful happens to you,
you have to try and borrow his mindset. You acknowledge the pain, of course, but then you pivot as quickly as you can to, okay, what did this process reveal? What input variable was wrong here?
And the creative sphere offers similar proof, emphasizing persistence even with emotional setbacks.
Exactly. I mean, look at J.K. Rowling. She faced numerous rejections of the Harry Potter manuscripts, and those rejections weren't verdicts on her talent or her worth as a writer. They were simply external feedback, indicating that the system, in this case, the publishing industry, wasn't ready for her work yet.
So she just had to keep trying.
She recognized them as stepping stones that required her to find new routes, rather than proof that she should abandon the quest for enduring magic.
What's fascinating here is it's the biological imperative to learn from the errors that cause us discomfort. This discomfort is proof you're stretching. If you don't stretch enough to occasionally make errors, you actually aren't trying hard enough to engage that neural rewiring that's necessary for genuine, measurable cognitive growth.
Right. So we know why the brain wants us to learn from errors, but how does this science actually play out in the mundane, day-to-day stumbles that make us feel bad?
We're moving now from the laboratory to the living room.
Exactly. Let's start with one of the most relatable blunders,
Yeah.
the misplaced attention trap, or what we call the lost keys phenomenon. We've all done it. Spending a panicked 20 minutes searching the house, tearing apart couches,
Checking your pockets for the 10th time.
only to find the keys in some illogical place, like the freezer or inside a cereal box.
And the immediate reaction is almost always self-recrimination. I'm so disorganized, or I'm getting so forgetful.
But the research suggests something far more insightful is going on. Studies that focus on attention and memory retrieval show that misplacing items often highlight specific periods when our attention system is heavily fragmented or cognitively overloaded.
So it's not a memory problem, it's an attention problem.
Largely, yes. The act of putting down the keys was likely performed while you were simultaneously thinking about an urgent email or planning dinner or having a stressful conversation. Your brain just didn't tag the memory with importance.
So the error isn't in my physical dexterity, it's in the failure of my supposed multitasking.
Precisely. The real lesson embedded in this blunder is not carelessness. It's a profound insight into attention management. The moment you find the keys, that emotional spike of relief is coupled with a physical location. This reinforces the need to develop more mindful routines.
Like what?
Like taking a pause, consciously labeling where the item is going. Literally saying to yourself, keys are going in the blue bowl. Or even just recognizing when your cognitive load is too high to perform routine tasks effectively.
That turns a moment of self-blame into an actual actionable insight about workflow and mental discipline. I love that we can extract that level of detail from just a mundane fumble. Okay, let's move to the kitchen, a place where mistakes are often the most spectacular.
Yes, the culinary disaster. This is universal. Burning a meal, botching a highly specific recipe, or the classic mistake of swapping sugar for salt.
I have done that. It was not good.
Our sources remind us that the kitchen is a perfect laboratory for growth because the feedback is immediate and often hilarious.
It's interesting how many historical examples we have of culinary breakthroughs born from necessity or just pure mishap.
Absolutely. The famous example is the tarte tatin. It supposedly arose when the Tatin sisters, who were running a hotel in France, accidentally overcooked the apples and butter in the pan.
So they basically burned the filling.
They did. And in a panic, one of the sisters just placed the pastry on top of the apples and baked it that way, then flipped it over to serve. They took an immediate, unfixable error and innovated a classic dessert.
That ability to pivot is so key.
It is. Each mistake refines your cooking instincts. The burnt crust teaches you about your oven's calibration. The overly sweet sauce teaches you about ingredient density. And the ability to laugh about it ensures you maintain a vital hunger for new experiences and experimentation. It prevents paralysis.
Which means you'll try new things instead of just sticking to the two dishes you know you can make perfectly.
Exactly.
And speaking of paralyzing fear, let's talk about public speaking. The dreaded awkward silence or just freezing on stage.
Oh, this is a big one. Every single great speaker, comedian, or performer has a deep, humiliating story about forgetting their words or stumbling through a crucial line or having a prop fail miserably. The sources remind us that the true value of this type of error isn't just in the dramatic recovery.
Though that is important.
It is, but the real value is in the deep, long-term lessons you learn from it.
Such as?
Well, humility, first and foremost. Knowing that you are capable of catastrophic failure humanizes you. It builds resilience because once you've survived the worst-case scenario, a total mental blank, the next challenge just doesn't seem quite so terrifying.
Right. You've been there. You survived.
And crucially, surviving these blunders teaches you how to connect authentically with the audience through your vulnerability. When an audience sees a speaker recover gracefully from an error, they actually relax and they trust that person more.
It's true. These everyday errors, they connect us all. They soften our egos and instantly open the door to genuine compassion for other people because everyone has had their keys in the fridge moment or that memory of freezing up when the spotlight was on them.
And to emphasize how powerful this normalization is, we can turn to the classroom model. The sources provide the mindset of a teacher named Emma, an elementary school teacher, who offers this profound antidote to perfectionism right where the fear often begins.
Emma's approach is really a masterclass in behavioral modeling. She doesn't just preach about mistakes, she actively models them herself.
How so?
She makes a show of her own errors. She'll misspell a word on the whiteboard, let the students catch it, and then she thanks them enthusiastically for being her editor and helping her improve.
That's brilliant. That strategy serves multiple purposes. It immediately normalizes error for the students. I mean, if the adult in the room, the source of authority and knowledge, is relaxed and even grateful about making mistakes, the kids will be too.
It shifts the entire classroom culture.
The whole thing.
And when she sees students who are paralyzed by fear, reluctant to even attempt a difficult problem.
Her mantra is a perfect visualization of the science we just discussed. She tells them, mistakes mean your brain is stretching. She frames that internal feeling of discomfort not as a sign of failure, but as physical evidence of cognitive growth.
She's giving them a new story to tell themselves.
A completely new story. She reminds them that the most powerful learning moments consistently follow an error and the resulting correction, not simply a perfectly correct answer delivered without any effort.
That framing is a revolutionary invitation to curiosity and to risk-taking. She's telling them to embrace the mental friction because the friction is the mechanism of improvement.
So now we need to expand this discussion.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond the individual misstep and see how mistakes interact with large-scale systems, our creative processes, professional organizational structures, and the lightning-fast world of modern technology.
Let's start with creativity, because this is where that fear of doing it wrong often causes paralyzing inaction. So many people avoid creative pursuits, writing, painting, composing music, because they are just afraid of the imperfect or outright awful initial output.
And yet, creativity fundamentally requires mistakes. The sources highlight that in the visual arts, for instance, Bob Ross popularized the concept of the happy little accident.
A classic.
He taught millions that you should not fear a stray brushstroke. Instead, you have to treat that unplanned element as an opportunity. That slight misstep, if you embrace it and integrate it, can often become the absolute best, most unique feature of the canvas.
It's the permission to allow a little chaos into the process, to acknowledge that creation is inherently messy. And we see this so acutely in music, especially with improvisation.
Absolutely. Improvisational musicians thrive entirely on transforming surprise. A note that might initially sound out of place, an unexpected chord, or a sudden rhythmic deviation, it's not discarded.
No, they lean into it.
They lean into it. It's immediately absorbed, repeated, and integrated, becoming a new musical motif or theme. The error acts as an unexpected source of inspiration that pushes the composition in a direction the musician never consciously planned.
And for writers, the source material explicitly mentions the necessity of bad first drafts.
Wow. Anne Lamott's famous essay, Shitty First Drafts, encapsulates this perfectly. She argues that masters of their craft understand that the first attempt must be awful. The masterpiece only evolves through a mistake-friendly revision process, where the writer is willing to create mountains of imperfect material just to find a few nuggets of gold.
The initial error is just necessary data.
It's the raw material.
So the real creative mistake is not the stray mark or the out-of-tune note or the bad line of prose. The mistake is the fundamental assumption that perfection is even possible on the first attempt. The mistake is being afraid to try badly.
And this challenge scales directly up into the corporate and organizational world, where the stakes are often measured in millions of dollars. Corporate failure stories are legion, but very few organizations genuinely foster constructive learning from mistakes culture.
Why not?
Because the fear of consequence is just so high, it's almost always easier to hide an error than to analyze it.
Despite that difficulty, the most innovative and resilient workplaces, the ones that demonstrate true systemic learning, are precisely the ones where mistakes are discussed openly and constructively, rather than being swept under the rug or used as a punitive tool. We need to move beyond generic advice here and look at some models.
One of the quintessential models discussed in the sources is Google's famed post-mortem culture, particularly within their site reliability engineering teams, or SREs. They recognize that if a failure occurs, the system allowed it to happen.
So the post-mortem isn't a witch hunt.
Not at all. It's a clinical analysis designed to prevent recurrence and encourage collective learning.
So how does that procedure actually work? What are the specifics that make it so effective?
Well, a successful post-mortem is built on two core pillars. First, and this is the most important, it must be blameless. The focus is always on systemic and procedural weaknesses, never on individual deficiency.
So it's not about who messed up.
It's about what in the system allowed the mess up. And second, it must be incredibly detailed and analytical. A typical SRE postmortem seeks to answer 5 key questions. What happened? When and how did we first detect it? What was the root cause? Not the proximate cause, but the underlying systemic factor. What specific actions could have prevented it? And finally, what were the lessons learned and how will we apply them moving forward?
By detailing those steps, you remove the emotional heat and you force an analytical discussion. That shift from who did this to how did the system allow this to happen, that's what defines what they call a just culture, which is often contrasted with a punitive blame culture.
Exactly. A just culture recognizes that humans are fallible and mistakes are inevitable, but it distinguishes between a systemic error and, say, a reckless deviation from standard procedure. This environment fosters psychological safety.
Which is a critical concept we hear about a lot.
And it's often linked to organizational resilience. When employees feel psychologically safe, they report mistakes faster and more accurately, which means the organization learns faster as a whole.
That offers really actionable advice for leaders and employees alike. If you are a leader, your role is to model that psychological safety. Share your own missteps. Immediately frame team mistakes as shared learning opportunities. Because if you panic or point fingers, you instantly shut down the learning mechanism for the entire team.
And if you're not in leadership position, you can still internalize this approach. You can start a private lessons learned journal. Don't focus on how bad you felt, focus on the data. Over time, you'll be able to spot patterns, recognize specific trigger points in your workflow, and maybe even uncover hidden strengths that only emerged because you successfully navigated a complicated error.
Let's pivot here to a related idea how technology changes this whole dynamic. Here's where it gets really interesting. How has the digital age amplified both the pain and the potential progress of making errors?
The digital magnification effect is profound. Mistakes made online are incredibly complex because they can be instantly amplified. You think of viral screenshots, immediate global dissemination, and instant, often harsh feedback loops.
So the perceived stakes feel impossibly high.
Impossibly high. It compounds that original cultural fear of error many times over. The memory of the error is almost indelible. It's searchable forever.
But the very nature of digital collaboration also fosters rapid, scalable, and documented growth from those same errors.
Which is the necessary trade-off, I suppose.
It is. The research highlights how many digital communities thrive on openly admitting errors. Look at coding communities like Stack Overflow. It is built entirely on the premise of collaborative troubleshooting.
Right, you post your problem.
Users post their programming mistakes, their bugs, their flawed logic, and a whole community of peers crowdsources efficient solutions. The mistake is the necessary input for collective learning.
And open source projects are another excellent model of this, a perfect one. In open source development, refinement happens precisely because developers learn from and document their bug fixes publicly. The entire evolution of the code is visible for anyone to see. Furthermore, digital portfolios and platforms allow the progression of work to be tracked publicly with visible versions and comments. You can see how an artist or writer evolved their technique over months by looking back at their initial flawed attempts.
So while mistakes move faster and are more public in the digital age, so too are the opportunities for collaboration, rapid correction, and documented growth. The pain is intense, but the learning curve is steep and incredibly efficient if you can lean into that feedback loop.
So having explored the science and the systems, we now need to shift our focus to the internal emotional work that's required to truly embrace mistakes. We have to acknowledge that relaxing into these moments requires intentional effort.
Especially when a mistake genuinely hurts, when it impacts other people or causes a tangible loss.
Right.
That's a vital acknowledgement. We can't just intellectualize our way out of the shame when a mistake means a missed opportunity or hurt feelings or a loss of value. In those raw moments, the idea of relaxed learning seems pretty much impossible.
And this is where self-compassion, as researched so extensively by the psychologist Kristin Neff, becomes the powerful necessary tool. Neff's work demonstrates empirically that people who treat themselves kindly after slipping up don't just feel better. They exhibit measurably faster emotional recovery, and they demonstrate significantly greater resilience when they face future adversity.
Self-compassion is often lazily categorized as self-pity, isn't it? But it's actually a proactive, disciplined set of cognitive steps.
Yeah.
How do we break down Neff's model for our listener?
Neff's model really rests on three core components, and they have to be practiced together. The first is self-kindness. So when a mistake happens, instead of defaulting to that harsh self-criticism, I am an idiot, I always mess this up, you replace that internal voice with one that is supportive and understanding.
The voice of a kind friend.
Exactly. That's the talking to yourself like a friend step we mentioned earlier. The second component, which is critical for moving beyond shame, is common humanity.
What does she mean by that?
This is the recognition that suffering, imperfection, and failure are universal human experiences. When you mess up, you are not a uniquely defective individual. You are simply participating in the shared human condition. This knowledge shifts the feeling from isolating shame to a connecting realization.
So the mistake is not a verdict on me, but a universal experience that I'm currently having.
Precisely. And the third step, which bridges the emotional state with the analytical process, is mindfulness. You have to acknowledge the pain or the negative emotion that's associated with the mistake without either exaggerating it, which is rumination, or suppressing it. You just note without judgment, this feels painful right now.
That dialogue shift from blame, I am an idiot, to curiosity, what was the input error? That's what truly creates the space for genuine resilient growth. It allows us to pivot quickly to analysis.
And this shift is what we need to model, especially for the next generation. The sources also discuss this pervasive trap of protection in parenting.
Parents universally want to shield their children from failure, from the sting of a low grade or a social rejection. But resilience isn't built through protection. It's built through weathering and learning from manageable setbacks.
If a child is never allowed to fail, they never develop the emotional and intellectual muscularity required to get back up, analyze a situation, and pivot.
So parents have to model this behavior.
They must. They have to actively model apology and self-correction. Share age-appropriate stories of your own struggles with learning something new. When you botch dinner or forget a commitment, you own it, you apologize, and you show the process of repair.
You're constantly reinforcing Emma's classroom idea. Stretching the comfort zone ensures mistakes are just an inherent part of the adventure, not a deviation from the path toward success.
And ultimately, all of this, relaxing into mistakes, is about fully committing to the growth mindset, as detailed by Carol Dweck's pioneering research.
Dweck's work, which is so foundational, teaches us that intelligence and talent are not fixed traits assigned at birth. They are qualities that develop through dedication, effort, and, crucially, constructive engagement with feedback.
The contrast is so illuminating. Someone with a fixed mindset, when they face a challenging mistake, like a low score on a test, will internalize it as, I am not smart enough, or I just lack the talent for this.
And they retreat from the challenge?
They do. An individual with a growth mindset, however, will internalize that exact same mistake as, okay, this strategy didn't work. I need to try a different approach, study harder, or ask for better resources.
They actively seek out those challenges. They value feedback, even when it stings, because they are confident that the mistake is not a verdict on their inherent worth or potential.
Exactly. Instead, it is the raw, necessary material required for iterative improvement. They see the error as a signpost, not a stop sign.
So if you find yourself tensing up at every little slip, you have to gently remind yourself that even the person you admire most in any field has a secret, vast catalog of fumbles, misjudgments, and mistakes that ultimately help them succeed. That vulnerability, that willingness to look incompetent for a time, that's the foundation of their current strength and mastery.
Okay, so we've established the cognitive necessity and the emotional requirement of embracing errors. Now let's distill this into specific, relaxed, and actionable steps that you, the listener, can implement immediately to truly turn mistakes into gold.
I think the first step has to be about managing that post-mistake emotional frenzy. And the sources say, reflect, don't ruminate. This is the application of mindfulness we were just talking about.
Right, but how do we clearly differentiate between painful, cyclical rumination and strategic, constructive reflection?
It's a key distinction. Rumination is cyclical, it's painful, and it focuses entirely on the shame or the unchangeable past. I should never have done that. I should have known better. Reflection is targeted, it's strategic, and it's future-oriented.
So we suggest dedicating a specific time-boxed window, it's called a mistake minute, at the end of the day or week. And in that minute, you focus only on discovering the pattern, the root cause, the trigger, or the flawed process, not rehashing the pain.
And a good question to ask is, what was the last thing I did right before the mistake occurred?
That's a great one. Okay, second, to normalize the process socially and externally, share your stories. The sources note that vulnerability is just a powerful tool for connection and learning.
So you share one funny, instructive, or even high-stakes mistake in a work huddle, or over dinner, or just in a casual conversation.
And that immediately relaxes the room. It gives permission for other people to be imperfect, and it helps the learning stick for everyone involved. Because stories, especially the embarrassing ones, are highly memorable. You're contributing to a just culture simply by being open.
Third, seek outside perspective through ask for targeted feedback. This requires humility and proactivity, which can be tough.
It can be, but you choose one specific area. You are still developing a skill, a communication style, a planning process, and you ask a trusted colleague or a friend for honest, specific feedback on just that one area. This removes the surprise element and transforms the mistake from a secret, shameful blunder into an ongoing communal project of improvement.
You are actively seeking the input necessary for growth.
Exactly.
Fourth, to maintain essential context and prevent the mistake from consuming your entire view of the situation, we have to ask, what went well?
This is so important. After every significant mistake, you have to name at least one thing you did right in that situation. Maybe you handled the communication professionally, or you organized the data impeccably, or you responded to the crisis really quickly.
Highlighting that context is crucial because it reminds you that the entire situation wasn't a total loss. It validates the efforts and strengths you already possess, which strengthens your resilience to then analyze the part that went wrong.
And finally, when a mistake is truly paralyzing, and you feel mentally stuck, maybe even physically frozen by overwhelm, the advice is simple. Breathe and move on.
That paralysis is often the brain just spinning its wheels in rumination.
It is. So use physical movement. Take a brisk walk, stretch, or change your scenery entirely. This physical shift helps break the mental feedback loop and allows you to start fresh mentally. It's an immediate physical way to reset your attention system.
The core goal throughout all these steps remains beautifully simple, doesn't it? It's just to remember that the only expectation is measurable, consistent progress, not unattainable perfection.
And as we step back and gain perspective, the accumulated wisdom reminds us that if mistakes are the teacher, then time is the ultimate curriculum that grades the lesson.
That is the ultimate wisdom of experience. When you chat with older relatives or mentors, their narratives blend humility, humor, and hard-won wisdom. They reveal this treasure trove of forgiven blunders, career moves that seemed catastrophic at the time, and misread situations that ultimately opened new, better, unexpected doors.
Their stories really reinforce the key truth. Mistakes might feel isolating, personal, and catastrophic in the moment, but in the grand scheme of a long life, they are universal, they are essential, and they are absolutely invaluable over time. They are the stories that define your character, not the failures that diminish it. #outro.
So what does this all mean for you right now?
At the end of the day, it means we should take it easy on ourselves. That feeling of discomfort is your brain engaging its learning mechanism. Mistakes are not defects or enemies. They are indispensable companions and powerful teachers on the journey of learning.
And if you are struggling and making mistakes, you are proving that you are stretching.
You're testing boundaries. You are actively living. If you're making mistakes, you are fundamentally making progress.
The goal then is to approach the entire journey, bumps, bruises, and all with curiosity, the discipline of self-compassion, and most importantly, with humor.
Remember that the more we talk about our mistakes, the more we realize that we are all learning together. That is the real essence of relaxed learning.
Exactly. Now, here is a final provocative thought for you to carry forward this week as you implement your new Mistake Minute. What is the last mistake you made, and what specific pattern did it reveal about your approach to multitasking or your need for deeper process analysis? Think about that lesson and carry it with you. That's all for this deep dive. We'll talk soon.
If you've ever felt that,
Yeah.
that crushing heavy weight of expectation, the kind that hits you at like 5 a.m. when you see someone else's post online about rising and grinding, then you know exactly what we're talking about today.
Oh, yeah. High intensity motivation.
That's a whole culture, right? It demands perfection, it demands instant success, and it often leaves us feeling just perpetually overwhelmed.
Or, and this is the irony, completely paralyzed.
Exactly.
It's that hustle culture paradigm. And I think that the definition of achievement itself is just, well, it's fundamentally flawed for any kind of long-term health.
Right.
The whole model relies on external pressure, on fear, and on that siren call to never quit until you're the best.
But the problem, as you said, it isn't just burnout. It's the paralysis that comes from setting the bar so impossibly high.
It is. When the expectation is superhuman, I think the safest psychological response for a lot of people is just to do nothing at all.
And that paralysis is the signal, isn't it? It's the sign that we need a different map.
A completely different map.
Our sources for this deep dive, and they're anchored by some really great insights from a motivational English talk without pressure, this suggested. I think a genuinely radical alternative. What if the most powerful motivation is actually gentle and steady and maybe most importantly, kind?
I love that.
So our mission today is to cut through all that noise and really extract the operating manual for finding your own momentum, free from that external judgment.
Yeah, giving yourself the space to breathe and reflect rather than feeling that constant abrasive push.
Exactly.
And this is exactly what you need when you're juggling complex projects, right? Like professional development, a new hobby, or something really deep like language study.
For sure.
People want to be well-informed and they want it quickly, but they need it distilled in a way that avoids the burnout that's so often tied to self-improvement.
So we're providing a shortcut, really.
A shortcut to understanding the mechanics of sustainable growth. We're focusing entirely on internal drivers and those critical, aha moments that let you progress on your own terms.
Without the stress.
Without the stress of information overload.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the foundational myth. Let's take a sledgehammer to the belief that only intense pressure, harsh deadlines, or that old no pain, no gain idea actually brings out our best work.
Yes.
This is section 1. Myth-busting the science of gentle drive.
We have to confront that narrative head-on. The one that says intensity equals effectiveness.
Right. We're sort of conditioned to believe it.
We are. Culturally, we're trained to respond to the drill, the looming deadline, the glorious overnight success stories you see on social media.
Yeah.
But our sources are really emphatic on this point. Sustained, healthy motivation rarely, if ever, comes from fear or force or shame.
We mistake the panic for drive.
We mistake the acute efficiency of a panic response for true long-term drive.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So that's the critical flaw in using force then. We see it in studies all the time. Forcing ourselves might get us over a single short hurdle.
For a little while.
But it quickly leads to anxiety, resentment, and then eventually you withdraw from the activity altogether.
You do.
So if the driver isn't force, what is the mechanism for that effortless motivation that the sources keep mentioning?
Okay, so that mechanism is a psychological concept called intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, and to really get it, we should probably look at something called self-determination theory, or SDT. It was proposed by 2 psychologists, Deci and Ryan.
Okay.
And intrinsic motivation is basically when your inspiration comes from internal rewards, like the pure satisfaction of the activity itself, rather than from any external pressures or incentives.
So it's not about the money or the praise or the good grade. It's about the activity feeling rewarding on its own.
Precisely. And SDT actually identifies 3 innate psychological needs that, when you meet them, they fuel this kind of motivation.
How do I?
The first is autonomy, which is the feeling that you're in control of your own choices.
Okay, so I'm the one calling the shots.
Exactly. The second is competence. That's the feeling of being effective and capable, like you're getting better at something.
That feeling of mastery.
Yes. And the third is relatedness or purpose. This is about feeling connected to others or feeling that your actions actually matter in some way.
So when you're intrinsically motivated, you're basically feeding these 3 core needs just by doing the task.
You've got it. You're fulfilling these needs simply by engaging in the task itself.
That makes the distinction so much clearer. So instead of being driven by the fear of missing a deadline, which is extrinsic pressure,
right,
or the promise of a bonus, an extrinsic incentive, we're driven by that feeling of getting better at something or just being curious or the pure joy of creating it.
And here's where a really surprising fact comes in. Often, if you introduce those extrinsic rewards, they can actively undermine or even kill the intrinsic motivation.
Really? How does that work?
It's known as the overjustification effect. So imagine someone genuinely loves to draw. They have high intrinsic motivation. Then you start paying them a lot of money for every single drawing they do.
Which you'd think would make them want to draw more.
You'd think so, but what often happens is they stop enjoying the process. They start focusing only on the reward. The drawing shifts from being this, joyous exploration into a job they're being paid to perform.
And that takes away their autonomy.
It completely undermines their autonomy. Suddenly, it's not their choice anymore, it's a transaction.
That's fascinating. You take a passion project, add the weight of a professional expectation, and poof, the joy just evaporates.
It can, yeah.
So the goal of this whole alternative approach then is to bottle that natural, effortless drive we feel in our passion projects,
right,
and apply it to the areas of our lives that usually feel heavy with expectation like work or self-improvement or that really demanding language course.
We're trying to shift the entire foundation of our drive, moving it away from fear and grades and bonuses and toward curiosity, mastery, and satisfaction.
Think about the real-world examples, right? Losing yourself in a creative flow, working for hours on a hobby just because you want to.
Or helping a friend move house because it just felt right.
Yes.
Those activities provide internal rewards, satisfaction, connection, competence, and that energy is basically infinite, unlike the very finite fuel of willpower that's driven by fear.
The real mission is learning how to bottle that intrinsic energy and then deploy it consistently.
That's the game.
But that requires a monumental internal shift. And I find that the biggest obstacle to that kind of internal gentle motivation isn't usually the external world. It's the noise we generate ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to section 2, taming the inner critic through self-compassion.
And we all have it, that internal force that just completely undermines gentle motivation, that harsh inner drill sergeant.
That voice that's always barking orders.
Exactly. You should have done more. You're so far behind everyone else. Why can't you just focus?
Yeah, and we've been culturally trained to believe that voice is a good thing, like it's a sign of discipline or rigor.
We mistake cruelty for necessity. We have this genuine belief that if we aren't tough on ourselves, we'll just become lazy or complacent.
That's the psychological trap, isn't it?
That's a huge trap. Because when your motivation is fundamentally driven by self-criticism, it inevitably devolves into debilitating anxiety or toxic guilt or even self-sabotage.
So it's counterproductive.
Totally. That critical energy, it burns hot and fast. It creates stress hormones like cortisol that actually narrow your focus and trigger an emotional threat response in your brain.
A threat response?
Yeah, so you end up focusing all your energy on avoiding the pain of the criticism rather than engaging positively with the actual task you're trying to do. It's just not sustainable for lasting growth.
Okay, so if the inner critic operates on fear and judgment, creating that threat response, then self-compassion has to be the antidote that calms the system down.
It is the antidote.
How does it work as a tool for lasting growth? How does it actually change that inner script?
Self-compassion is, on a neurological level, a shift from your sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight response, to your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. It's fundamentally about acknowledging that struggle is just part of being human. It's not self-indulgence. It's an act of profound self-respect. It's a commitment to move forward in a way that honors where I am right now.
So we're replacing the internal threat with internal support. What's the practical benefit of doing that?
Well, when you show yourself compassion after a setback, say you missed a workout or you fumbled an important task, you stop the stress spiral. Instead of flooding your brain with cortisol and adrenaline, which literally shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the part you need for planning and learning.
The smart part of your brain.
The smart part, exactly. You allow for reflection. Criticism inhibits learning. Understanding nurtures it. The core principle is clear. Motivation takes root when we water it with understanding, not the acidic punishment of criticism.
This is a really vital psychological tool for immediate application, especially when that critical voice starts getting loud. And the source gives this fantastic practical test for it.
It does, a really simple one. The next time you feel tempted to get tough on yourself for a missed goal or just a lackluster day, just pause and genuinely ask yourself 2 questions.
Okay.
First, what would I say to a friend who is feeling this exact way? And second, how can I offer myself that same measured encouragement, support, and gentleness?
That comparison immediately throws a spotlight on the double standard we hold ourselves to, doesn't it?
Instantly.
We would never scold a friend for being human or for being tired or for making a small mistake. We'd offer them empathy and a gentle nudge forward.
But we treat ourselves like these demanding, tyrannical bosses. Precisely. Self-compassion acknowledges that suffering exists, and instead of reacting to it with punitive force, it reacts with kindness and curiosity and a drive to resolve the pain in a constructive way.
So you can't have pressure-free motivation while also, waging a war against your current self.
You can't. It's impossible. It requires a profound act of forgiveness for the simple fact of being imperfect. And that forgiveness is what allows us to trust the process and show up again tomorrow.
Okay, so we've shifted the internal conversation. Now we need a structure. We need a way to manage the sheer magnitude of our goals and all the demands from the external world.
Right, the practical framework.
Which leads us straight to section 3, the power of tiny steps, which introduces the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen.
Kaizen's the perfect structural antidote to the pressure cooker mentality. The word literally means change for the better. And it refers to this idea of continuous incremental improvement. It actually originated in post-World War II Japanese manufacturing, famously adopted by Toyota. And it emphasizes that small, constant tweaks are far more powerful over the long run than massive disruptive changes.
Which is so counterintuitive for us. We often equate ambition with taking these massive, overwhelming leaps.
Me too.
Kaizen just flips this on its head. It favors tiny, manageable steps.
Yeah.
But I want to get into the why. Why is this tiny step approach so psychologically powerful? It's more than just it's less work.
Oh, it's much more. The secret is in the neurological response to friction.
Friction. Okay.
When we think about a huge, overwhelming goal like, say, write a 300-page book, our brain immediately flags this as a threat. The perceived effort is just astronomical.
Sure.
This triggers the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system, and that leads directly to procrastination or that freeze behavior we talked about. This is high mental friction.
So the goal itself is physically signaling danger to my brain.
Absolutely. Kaizen works because it makes the task so infinitesimally small that it bypasses the amygdala entirely.
It flies under the radar.
It flies right under the radar. If your goal is just read one page or write one single sentence, the effort required is so minimal that the brain registers negligible friction. There's no fear, so there's no procrastination.
And all the energy you would have spent fighting the fear
It's channeled directly into the task. You save so much energy.
That explains why the main psychological benefit is the complete removal of the need to be perfect or fast. If I only have to write one sentence, there's no pressure for that sentence to be a masterpiece.
The stakes are incredibly low, and that low-stakes environment directly combats burnout. Burnout is so often the result of this stressful gap between where you are and where you feel you need to be.
Right.
Kaizen just dissolves that overwhelming gap into a gentle, reliable series of stepping stones that compound over time.
Let's look at the examples from the sources. They show just how small these commitments can be.
They're tiny. For someone aiming to write more, the commitment is literally one sentence per day.
That's it.
That's it. For someone focused on language practice, it's recording yourself speaking for 1 minute instead of dedicating hours to rehearsing these complicated scenarios.
And the beauty of these actions is that they prioritize consistency over intensity.
That's the whole philosophy. And once you achieve that small win, you leverage what's called the momentum principle. Motion begets motion. You often find that one sentence naturally leads to 2, or that 1 minute of speaking turns into 5.
Not because you forced it.
But because the internal friction was already gone, you were already moving.
This brings us to that fantastic case study from the source material, Mia's English journey. This story just perfectly encapsulates the shift from pressure-fueled failure to gentle, consistent success.
It really does. Mia was trapped in that classic anxiety cycle. She dreaded her English meetings at work.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
For sure. And to cope, she would spend hours and hours preparing, memorizing entire scripts word for word, trying to achieve this flawless communication. But despite all that immense effort, the high-pressure environment of the meeting, it was like an exam for her. It caused her to freeze. All her preparation became useless.
So the preparation was so intense, it actually became the enemy of her performance.
Exactly. The pressure was overwhelming the core skill. The performance anxiety around getting it right just shut down her ability to access the language naturally.
So what was the Kaizen-inspired intervention? What did she do differently?
Her mentor suggested a radical shift. Every day, she would record herself speaking for just 1 minute.
1 minute.
And the topics were deliberately low stakes. They were entirely focused on her personal life, talking about what she ate for breakfast, describing her mood, maybe complaining about her cat's latest antics.
And work talk.
No work talk. And crucially, there was no audience, no test, and no expectation of perfection.
That is so brilliant because it leverages autonomy, one of those 3 core needs from SDT we talked about earlier. She was in complete control of the topic and the environment.
Exactly. And the lack of external evaluation, no tests, no grades, allowed her to show up consistently. She wasn't preparing for a performance. She was just gently practicing the act of speaking.
And over time,
over several weeks, this low-stakes consistency just organically boosted her confidence. Her spoken English became less stilted, more natural, because she was leveraging curiosity and satisfaction, not fear.
So Mia proved that consistency beats intensity every single time when it comes to sustainable skill building.
Every time. You just have to lower the bar enough so you can show up every day.
Okay, so we've learned to manage the inner critic. We've established a sustainable pace with Kaizen. The next logical step is making sure all this gentle energy is actually pointing in the right direction.
Yes.
Which is section 4. Personalizing the drive connecting goals to core values.
And this step is, it's absolutely non-negotiable. If you're borrowing someone else's goal or you're chasing a path that doesn't align with your deeply held values, you will have to rely solely on finite willpower.
And you will eventually burn out.
Every time. Every person's motivational fire burns differently. Your motivation has to be customized.
But how do we discover that internal why? We often look for this huge, booming inspiration, but the sources suggest motivation can be much quieter.
It's often just a nudge of curiosity, a little whisper that asks, I wonder what would happen if I tried this.
So how do you find that?
The search for the why starts with self-discovery tools that prioritize curiosity and joy over obligation. We need to look internally and ask some simple questions.
Like what?
What activities make you completely lose track of time?
Yeah.
You know, where 2 hours feel like 10 minutes.
Yeah, the flow state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When do you feel most alive or engaged or just curious? What draws you in even when you're physically tired? The answers to these questions reveal the natural current of your intrinsic motivation.
That's a key distinction. If you are doing something because you feel you should be, and it drains you.
That's external pressure masquerading as drive.
But if you're drawn to it even when you are exhausted?
That is genuine alignment.
And this leads right into the concept of value misalignment. Motivation just dries up when we chase goals that clash with our core values.
Or when we pursue paths that look good on paper, the high salary, the impressive title, but they just don't feel good in the heart. And this creates immense cognitive dissonance.
Let's define that dissonance explicitly. How does value misalignment drain our resources?
Cognitive dissonance is the mental stress or discomfort you experience when you hold contradictory values, beliefs, or actions at the same time.
Okay.
So if your core value is, say, connection, but your job requires 6 hours a day of solitary, high-stress, competitive work, your brain is constantly running two contradictory programs.
I see.
This forced conflict consumes an immense amount of cognitive energy. It depletes the prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function and willpower. You're constantly having to override your authentic self, which is just exhausting.
So instead of flowing naturally, you're using precious, finite willpower just to show up and stay engaged. That explains the extreme fatigue people feel when they're misaligned. So how do we begin to align our actions with our values?
The source details a really powerful 3-step alignment process. Step 1, write down your core values. And be specific. Is it creativity, learning, community, health, freedom?
Okay, get clear on them.
Step 2, check if your current daily actions and your primary goals genuinely reflect those values. Just an honest audit.
And step 3.
Step 3, determine one small shift you can make this week to honor your true self. Just one.
So if my value is learning, but I spend all my downtime consuming passive, unchallenging media,
Right.
the shift might be to just allocate 15 minutes a day to a challenging new textbook or a deep documentary.
Precisely. That simple value-aligned action refills your energy instead of draining it.
When goals and values align, the motivation just flows naturally because you're acting with integrity.
You stop forcing and you start following a path that feels authentic. This step transforms motivation from a sporadic external chore into an authentic lifestyle choice, powered by those intrinsic rewards we talked about.
Okay, now that we have the right internal compass, we have to talk practical implementation. Because even perfect alignment can be derailed if your immediate surroundings are working against you.
For sure.
Section 5 is all about architecting an environment for gentle motivation.
This is such a critical principle. Your environment shapes your motivation far more effectively than relying solely on willpower.
Willpower is finite.
It's a finite, exhausting resource.
Yeah.
A well-designed environment, on the other hand, is a constant, subtle helper. It's a nudge that guides you toward the behavior you want without any conscious struggle.
I love that idea of designing for success by focusing on the frictionless start. So first, we need to stick to a manageable list of goals.
Absolutely. Goal decluttering is step 1. If you have 20 goals, you will start none of them. We all are. Reduce the list to the 2 or 3 things that truly align with your core values. Then we look at visual cues.
Gentle reminders.
Gentle reminders of intention. And this isn't about harsh accountability, it's about soft nudges. Think about an inspiring playlist that starts the moment you sit down to work.
Or a mood board.
A mood board that reminds you of the feeling you're working toward, not the required output.
And the physical space adjustments are so vital for creating that frictionless start. It's really about making the desired action easier than the undesired one.
This is nudge theory in practice. If you want to practice guitar, put the guitar on a stand right next to your couch.
Not in a case in the closet.
Exactly. Don't hide it away. If you want to eat healthier, cut up the vegetables the night before and place them right at eye level in the fridge.
You're eliminating the friction.
You're eliminating the steps that require you to use willpower to even start. You bypass the cognitive cost of initiating the task.
It's making the path of least resistance the path of desired behavior. Okay. Beyond the physical, the source highlights the critical importance of a supportive social network, the encouragement squad.
This is non-negotiable for gentle motivation. You need people who cheer you on without comparing or competing.
Yeah.
The sources emphasize that one genuine supporter vastly outweighs a room full of naysayers or people who impose that unhelpful competitive pressure we're actively trying to escape.
Toxic comparison is just the fastest way to kill intrinsic motivation.
It is.
And this often requires making some tough choices about who we spend our time with. It means implementing boundaries.
Yes. And implementing healthy boundaries is an act of self-compassion. We have to limit time with people or in situations that actively drain our energy or apply that destructive pressure.
And what if you don't have that local support system?
For those who lack that, the sources highlight the necessity of cultivating virtual lifelines.
Online communities.
Online communities focused on genuine support, mentorship, or non-competitive study groups. The support doesn't have to be physical, it just needs to be non-judgmental and focus on celebrating effort over outcome.
Okay, so we have the right internal dialogue, the right pace, the right direction, and a supportive environment. But growth is still inherently challenging. We can't eliminate discomfort.
No, you can't.
So Section 6 addresses this. Embracing discomfort and reframing failure.
And this section requires us to analyze that key difference between a healthy challenge and harmful pressure. Growth absolutely requires stepping outside your comfort zone.
You can't learn a language without opening your mouth.
Exactly. But that process should never feel like self-violence.
So how do we distinguish between the two states? What's the feeling of eustress, that healthy discomfort, versus the harmful dread of distress or pressure?
Healthy discomfort or eustress feels like stretching after a long day. It's unfamiliar, maybe a little tight or awkward, but you know it's constructive and will lead to greater flexibility. Harmful pressure or distress feels like running a marathon with absolutely no training. It's pure dread, potential for injury, and a high probability of failure that will lead to shame.
So your body and your emotions are the indicators.
They're excellent, immediate indicators of which type of challenge you're facing. You have to learn to listen to them.
And not just override those signals with force. The actionable tip here is a simple but powerful litmus test for this.
It is. If a challenge results in excited nervousness, that mix of fear and genuine curiosity, it's probably healthy discomfort.
You should try it.
Try it in small, supported, Kaizen-sized doses. But if the challenge results in pure, crippling dread, you need to pause.
Dread is the stop sign.
Dread is the stop sign. It's a signal that a deep-seated fear of judgment or inadequacy is lurking underneath, and you have to address that fear kindly with self-compassion before you attempt the task. Don't just force yourself into the pain.
And often that dread is rooted entirely in the fear of failure.
Almost always.
So if we want sustainable, gentle motivation, we have to completely combat that fear by reframing what failure even is.
We have to intentionally reframe all our efforts as experiments, not exams.
Oh, I like that.
When we view our actions as a series of pass-fail tests, every setback becomes a judgment on our personal worth. That's a fixed mindset.
Right.
But when we view life as a lab, every setback is just valuable data. That's a growth mindset. This distinction is the core of sustainable learning.
So if I try to use a new grammar point in a work conversation and I completely botch the sentence structure, That's not a failing grade on my linguistic abilities. It's just data gathering. I now know where the gap in my knowledge is and what to adjust for the next experiment.
Exactly. Or if you skip a week of practicing your hobby because life got in the way, it's not a moral failure.
It's not.
You just notice how you feel after the pause, maybe less focused, maybe more rested, and you gently and kindly begin again the next day without all the self-loathing that usually comes with those fixed mindset failures.
The core trust of motivation without pressure is just always forgiving yourself and trusting the power of showing up, even imperfectly.
That's it.
And to really cement that idea of celebrating the process over the outcome, the source suggests a vital practice, the celebration ritual.
The celebration ritual is the moment you consciously interrupt that comparison cycle. Each week, you just jot down 3 small things you tried.
Not what you won.
Not what you won or what you perfected, what you attempted, what you learned, or where you just allowed yourself to be uncomfortable for a minute.
You're celebrating the effort.
You're forcing yourself to celebrate the effort, the willingness to engage, and the consistency of the small steps, rather than just the final, often unattainable result. It is a critical mechanism for rebuilding that internal intrinsic drive.
We've covered the entire philosophical and structural shift. Now let's move to section 7, which is all about the practical hands-on toolkit.
The good stuff.
These are the 5 immediate tools our listener can implement today for gentle motivation, followed by some real-world stories that show their power.
And these tools are designed to translate all those abstract concepts we've been discussing, Kaizen, self-compassion, intrinsic focus, into immediate behavioral actions.
Okay, tool number 1 is the Daily Motivation Journal. And this is about committing a truly tiny, Kaizen-approved 3 minutes a day to set an internal tone.
This journal is an intentional shift away from the typical anxiety-inducing to-do list. In those 3 minutes, you answer 3 distinct questions.
What are they?
First, what do I want to enjoy today? This focuses you on joy and satisfaction, the intrinsic reward.
Okay.
Second, how do I want to feel? This focuses on your desired emotional state, that's self-compassion and alignment. And third, what's one small step I can take towards something I care about? That is your Kaizen micro-commitment. The focus is entirely on prioritizing enjoyment and feeling over just maximizing output.
That sets a completely different intention for your day than starting with a list of obligations. Okay, tool number 2 is the progress board.
The progress board is a highly visual tracking mechanism. It can be a simple sheet of paper or a digital tool like Trello.
And its purpose?
Its purpose is purely to build momentum and leverage the psychological satisfaction of completion. You move tasks or steps or even simple doodles across the board, and you explicitly celebrate every done.
So it's visual proof of your consistency?
It's visual proof that feeds that feeling of competence we talked about in SDT.
I love that. Tool 3 directly counters the inner critic. Affirmation cards.
These are gentle truth checks. They're designed to replace that harsh inner drill sergeant. The goal is to write out kind, personalized affirmations.
Like what?
Things like, I am growing at my own pace, or my best is good enough, or I trust my process, and you place them where they'll interrupt your cycle of self-criticism.
On the bathroom mirror, on your phone, wallpaper.
Inside a project notebook. They're just constant, non-judgmental reminders of your commitment to self-compassion.
Okay, tool number 4 is maybe the most famous commitment device for overcoming procrastination. The 10-minute rule.
A classic. If you're feeling stuck, the commitment is not to finish the task, but just to engage with it for 10 minutes. The rationale, again, connects back to the amygdala. It's too small a commitment to trigger the fear response. Most people can commit to almost anything for just 10 minutes.
And as we said, motivation often follows action.
By overcoming that initial inertia in the first 10 minutes, you dramatically increase the probability that those 10 minutes will turn into 30 or 60, not through force, but just through natural engagement.
And finally, tool 5. This is often the hardest one for people steeped in the hustle culture mentality. Celebrate pauses.
This is so critical, and it has a direct neurological justification. We have to internalize that rest is not the enemy of motivation. It is the fuel.
Right.
Rest and unstructured downtime allow the brain to process and consolidate information. It's a process run by what's called the default mode network, or DMN.
The DMN.
When you're actively focused on a task, you use your executive network. When you rest, the DMN activates, and it starts linking disparate ideas, solving creative problems in the background, and solidifying memories.
So if you don't schedule rest.
If you don't schedule rest guilt-free, you end up relying on crashing, which is negative pressure. Scheduling rest is an act of proactive self-kindness that sustains long-term motivation and intellectual depth.
That reframes rest from something we earn to something we need for optimal performance. Okay, let's see these tools in action with the 2 real stories from the source material, starting with Chris the animator.
Chris wanted to learn animation, which is a highly skilled and visually demanding field. He was completely intimidated by formal training and the high, often competitive standards set by online experts.
His anxiety about not being good enough was that pressure that kept him paralyzed.
It was. He was waiting for the perfect time, the perfect course, the perfect level of ability to start.
So his gentle goal was set using Kaizen to lower that activation energy.
Exactly. His commitment was 10 minutes of animation practice nightly on a free app. The quality didn't matter at all. He was focused entirely on the joy of the attempt.
So what did he make?
For months, he produced these messy, silly 3-second clips of a stick figure moving awkwardly. He never forced it. He focused on autonomy, his own ideas, and he never burned out. He was just showing up consistently and gently.
And the result was exponential. It demonstrates that compounding effect of consistency.
Totally. 2 years later, those small, gentle increments, those messy little 3-second clips, had accumulated into a surprisingly robust, skill-based portfolio.
Wow.
He built genuine competence and joy, quietly and steadily, proving that intense bursts are just unnecessary when you have consistent, low-stakes effort over a sustained period. He was relying on intrinsic mastery, not extrinsic praise.
And the story of Layla the happy speaker reinforces that same idea for language learning, focusing on play and curiosity.
Layla was convinced she had no talent for languages. That's a classic inner critic narrative.
Right, I'm just not a language person.
Exactly. But when she enrolled in a low-pressure setting, her shift was inspired by a kind teacher who prioritized curiosity over performance. She started by just committing to listen to 5 minutes of English podcasts daily.
Just listening.
Just listening. And scribbling down words and phrases that caught her fancy. Crucially, she didn't force speaking at first. She was treating the language like a sandbox, not a test.
So what did she do?
She would play with songs, mimic cartoon voices, experiment with different accents. She was engaging the language through fun and low-pressure methods, meeting her intrinsic needs for curiosity and relatedness.
This slow, fun path, which removed all the high-stakes testing, was revolutionary for her.
It was. And the outcome wasn't a high grade on a test, but a practical, surprising fluency. Her friends later noticed her casual fluency.
She didn't sound rehearsed. She sounded natural.
Exactly. She achieved a level of comfortable communication that surprised even herself, demonstrating that when learning is powered by fun and curiosity and low friction, it dramatically outperforms attempts fueled by anxiety and external pressure.
These stories just underscore the entire premise of our deep dive. Quiet, sustained, gentle achievement is always the most powerful form of progress.
It really is.
Which brings us to our conclusion. Section 8, the motivation map and final thought. We've gathered all these philosophical and practical insights, and now you, the listener, need a structured way to synthesize them into a personal, actionable framework.
And the motivation map is the perfect capstone exercise for that. It's an invitation to take some quiet time and personalize this path, and to recognize that this map is a living, breathing guide, not a final exam.
Right, it's something you can revisit and adjust as you grow. This structure synthesizes everything we've covered, from intrinsic drive to environmental design. So what are the 5 key categories that need to be in your personalized motivation map?
Okay, first, list your energizers. What activities and people provide you with a natural spark, boosting your intrinsic motivation?
Okay.
Second, define your values. The core principles, creativity, connection, health, that you want your daily actions to honor. This ensures alignment and helps you avoid that cognitive dissonance. Third, outline your gentle goals. Goals that feel good, defined in those Kaizen-sized increments.
And the final 2 categories are?
Fourth, identify your support systems. Who encourages you without applying pressure, and what boundaries do you need to set to maintain that support network?
Right.
And fifth, document your rests and rituals. What truly recharges you, leveraging that DMN we talked about, and how will you schedule that rest guilt-free?
This map synthesizes self-compassion, alignment, consistency, and rest into one accessible personal document.
It puts it all on one page for you.
So to reiterate the core mechanics we've uncovered: Motivation is a quiet whisper of curiosity, not a shout of command.
Progress is incremental, built through tiny, fearless steps.
And self-compassion is the paramount nutrient that allows for any sustained growth.
And this all leads us to the final mantra that should guide this entire approach. Choose compassion over comparison.
Love that.
In a world that's constantly obsessed with who's ahead and who's behind, the most powerful and sustainable motivation comes from knowing you have the right to grow, to stumble, to rest, and to rise all on your own unique timeline.
We have to stop using external metrics to judge an internal journey.
We have to.
This philosophy trusts the internal process entirely. It trusts your pace. It understands that by lowering the friction and increasing the kindness, we actually increase the likelihood of success.
Absolutely. Motivation without pressure is, at the end of the day, about self-trust. It requires letting go of the myth that only pain produces progress. And embracing that quiet, steady, consistent growth is the most potent and long-lasting kind.
And with that, we want to leave you with one final thought. An invitation to reflection that builds on everything we've discussed today. Something for you to mull over on your own beautiful journey.
Carry this reflection with you. When life gets overwhelming and you feel that urge to chase motivation like it's something you have to capture through force, pause. Instead, create the necessary physical and mental space to simply let it wander in quietly, like a gentle friend. Trust the process, trust your chosen pace, and know that trying just a little today is truly, authentically more than enough.